Hello and welcome to my weekly roundup of bike tech news, and a really juicy edition this week as we have what appears to be the first sighting of the brand new Pinarello Dogma F14. And elsewhere, is Shimano developing electronic hydraulic disc brakes, Fox has a brand new gravel suspension fork in the pipeline, Mason has shown a brand new prototype hardtail mountain bike, and have you seen this funky 3D printed crankset from SRAM? Wow, what a looker. So let's dive in. But first, if you're new around here and you like what you see, then consider hitting that subscribe button down below. Loads more bike news and bike reviews on a weekly basis, so hit that red button down below. Okay, now let's dive in. And we'll start with what appears to be the first sighting of a brand new Pinarello Dogma F14, the successor to the current Dogma F12 being campaigned by the Team Ineos squad. It was first spotted by an Italian bike website, and the rider on the bike is actually, get this, Fausto Pinarello himself, the boss of the bike brand. With just a few photos to go on, we can't really glean too much detail from it, but we can do some speculation, so let's dive in. Now firstly, it has disc brakes. Now the current Dogma F12 is available with disc brakes, but Team Ineos used a rim brake version, presumably because of the weight benefits of the rim brake version over a disc brake bike. The fact this new bike is seen with disc brakes gives us no evidence on whether the new bike will be disc brake only, like so many top-end road race bikes are currently. So will Pinarello go down the same route and only offer a disc brake version, or will it accommodate Team Ineos and people who prefer rim brakes with a rim brake version? Well, I don't know, to be honest. We'll find out when it launches. But if they do follow the trend for disc brakes and they don't offer a rim brake version, it will mean Team Ineos finally make the switch to disc brakes, being the only team in a pro peloton right now using rim brakes compared to every other team on disc brakes. Although it's not really holding them back, with Egan Bernal doing pretty well in the Giro at the time of making this video. Away from disc brakes, the most obvious change, the biggest detail I can see on the bike, is the way the rear stays, the seat stays attached to the seat tube. Now since the Dogma F12 launched back in 2019, the UCI rules have changed a little bit around aerodynamics and frame design. And one of those is the distance between the frame, the rear stays and the fork blades and the wheel. And what we're seeing is quite a few aero frames with the rear stays pushed further away from the wheel. And the idea here basically is to allow that turbulent air to flow more easily, more freely between the frame and the wheel. The most extreme example of this design trend is the Hope track bike with the mad fork blades and rear stays, which you might have seen. But back in the normal world, quite a few bike brands are going down the route of moving the rear stays away from the rear wheel. And the most obvious example that springs to mind is the Villa Falante SLR, which you might see my review on, link above if you missed it. And it actually has what appears to be very similar rear stays, the way they attach to the seat tube, as what we're seeing on the Dogma F14. So very similar design, drop rear stays and curved out around the wheel to meet the seat tube. Elsewhere, it appears the down tube has also changed. Now the current bike, the Dogma F12, has what they call a flat back profile. So a truncated profile, rounded on the front and flattened, squared off on the back with a water bottle. And the idea is to flow air around the water bottle to reduce drag from the water bottle. And it appears the new Dogma F14 takes that into consideration with a much more sculptured, more shapely down tube than the current design. We also appear to have full internal cable routing from the one-piece handlebar and stem, so no visible cables or hoses at the front, as is the way with most modern road bikes. And those are really the details we can ascertain from these photos, but other changes or requests we might have for a new bike, well, number one would be reduced weight. The Dogma F12 isn't known as being the lightest bike in the peloton, and it's arguably one of the reasons why Team Ineos choose rim brakes with their super expensive lightweight wheels to get down to that UCI 6.8 kilogram weight limit, whereas other more modern disc brake bikes can get to that weight limit. And lastly, wider tyre clearance would be good as well. Less important to the pros, I know, who stick with 25 or 26, but for normal people buying this bike who want comfort, whether it's speed and performance and stiffness, a wide tyre would be good. So I'd expect in the region of 30mm would be what you want on a bike, looking at what other brands are doing. So 28, 30, even 32, like a Giant TCR perhaps. So that's all I can tell, that's all I can speculate on this new bike. But let me know what you think down below. If you can see anything I might have missed, let me know in the comment section down below. So we have electronic gears. How about electronic brakes? I know it sounds crazy, right? But it could be the new product that Shimano is working on. So Shimano has filed a new patent for just this. Now, of course, the Japanese company files patents for all sorts of innovations that never see the light of day. But could this be a glimpse into the future? Could it actually be a feature of the brand new, yet to be launched Dura-Ace group set? Well, who knows? It could be. Probably a stretch too far, but what a piece of technology. So currently you have a master cylinder within the hood. So you pull the brake lever, that master cylinder is activated, pushes fluid down the hose to the brake caliper, the pads contact the disc rotor. All very simple. But what Shimano is proposing is replacing that master cylinder with an electronic motor. So you pull the lever, that motor activates and pushes fluid down the hose to the caliper. But why do this? Why replace hydraulics with electronic motors? What are the benefits? Well, I don't know. I can only speculate until it's actually launched, if it ever launches. But it could be making the component smaller. So packaging the hydraulic gubbins within the hood is quite a challenge. And the best or worst example of this is the original SRAM hoods, which had a really tall hood because the master cylinder took up that much space. But Shimano had really small hoods, done a better job of packaging the hydraulic gubbins within the hoods. But if you replace that master cylinder with a motor, it could potentially be much smaller and get the hoods a lot smaller. The other benefit could be weight. Now, disc brakes have a weight penalty over rim brakes. By replacing the hydraulic gubbins with electronic motors, it could be a way to get the weight penalty much lower, even bringing it in line with rim brakes, or potentially even lighter. And it could also be a way to customize how the brakes work and feel. Adjust the lever feel, how much travel you have, how much force is required when the brakes activate in the lever travel. And it could also be a way of increasing the clearance between the disc brake rotor and their pads, which at the moment is very tight on most systems and is quite commonly a cause of rubbing or get grit in there. So it could be a way of opening up the clearance by using the electronic motors to activate the brakes in a different way to you currently have with hydraulics. On the other hand, it's another motor and it needs a battery, of course. I guess we powered off the main central Di2 battery, but it could be an impact on runtime and potentially something else go wrong as well. So there is that. But it's all speculation at the moment. Don't know any more than the patent gives. I'll put a link to that down below if you want to check out yourself and see what you can make from it. Let me know what you think of electronic brakes in the comment section down below. Suspension on gravel bikes, well, surely a mountain bike, isn't it? Well, sort of, but not quite. So it looks like from some photos on social media that Fox is working on an update to its original AX gravel suspension fork, launched in 2018. I actually reviewed it in 2019. There's a review on Google if you're going to find it. That original fork was basically a mountain bike fork, a 32 fork cut down to offer 40 millimeters of travel, 15mm through axle, post mount disc brakes. It was quite heavy, really heavy in fact, compared to a carbon fork on a gravel bike. And the axle to crown length was really high and really jacked up the front of a bike. And there were clearance issues with some down tubes that weren't curved with the crown of the fork. But as a concept, it worked pretty well. 40 millimeters doesn't sound like much, but it's double what the Diverge has with the Future Shock. And on really rough gravel or more mountain bike trails where some people, myself included, do take gravel bikes, it did offer more bump absorption and more control in those situations. But it was really heavy. Hopefully that's something the new design addresses and looks totally different to the original. This appears to be a ground up design for gravel bikes. So we have slim, tapered legs, which I guess will save a lot of weight over that original one. I don't know how much travel it will have. It'll probably have 40 millimeters the same as before, but it might be adjustable. It'd be great if you can adjust it 20, 30, 40, depending on the riding you're doing, the terrain you're riding as well. And naturally, you can expect the latest Fox suspension internals. So air spring, hydraulic rebound, compression, loads of control in the rebound and compression, volume spaces to adjust how it feels. We also have a reverse arch. So the original fork had the arch on the front, it's now on the back. And the reason I've done that is, I don't know to be honest, it could simply be looks, it could be stiffness or weight, or it could be increased tyre clearance, I don't know. And hopefully the tyre clearance has increased a bit as well. You want at least 50, maybe even 55, to give you that big chunky tyre you want on a gravel bike, especially one with a suspension fork, which gives you much more capability to ride trails you can't do on a rigid gravel bike. The other issue I had, apart from weight with that fork originally, was the axle to crown. So basically a lot longer than a normal gravel fork and really jacked up the front of a bike. And most gravel bikes aren't designed for suspension forks at all. The geometry isn't adapted for a suspension fork. So that is an issue. I don't know if something they've addressed with this design, but remains to be seen how they tackle that issue. At the moment, no idea on release date or cost, but the original fork was about £1,000, so don't expect this new one to be much cheaper than that, probably even more. Now, suspension on a gravel bike is an interesting debate, and I know some people are for it and some people are really against it, and some people make the obvious suggestion you go to a mountain bike if you want suspension on a gravel bike. But I do think there is space for a bit of suspension, a bit of comfort on a gravel bike without going to the extremes of a mountain bike, which is a very different proposition for people who want a gravel bike. And the gravel bike market has moved on a lot since that original fork was launched, which I'm sure some of you probably didn't even realise existed. So hopefully the fork will come out soon. Hopefully I'll get my hands on one to try it and see how it works and see whether this is the next step for gravel in this evolution that the gravel bike market is on. Some of you know I love a bit of 3D printed technology, and I've done a few features on 3D printed bikes and parts in previous bike news videos, and SRAM has now weighed in the party with these funky new cranks, which on first impressions, I'm really not sure what to make of them. I'm not sure whether to love them or hate them. Let me know what you think down below. They definitely stand out, don't they? What they are is a 3D printed titanium crankset with a design generated entirely by a computer program that runs through loads of designs based on the constraints you provide it with. It's a process called generative design. Basically what you do is give the computer program software loads of reference points, and the program will rapidly run through many iterations based on the constraints. Now, a crank arm has one job. It connects the pedals to the chain set, and it has to be structurally sound. Weight and appearance are really secondary to that first requirement to be stiff and strong. And the result is a crank arm unlike anything I've seen before. Excess material has been removed, and while it doesn't structurally look very sound, apparently it can handle up to 10 G of load, so it should be plenty stiff enough for most of us. And the other benefit is weight. It's apparently 20% lighter than a traditional crankset. Clever computer software then. Could all bikes and products be made like this in the future? Well, I don't see why not. Let me know what you think down below. And lastly, Mason is a brand here in the UK that many of you will be aware of. The Resolution, the Definition road bikes, and the Boker gravel bike, and the ISO, the beefed up gravel bike it launched a few years ago. And now it appears they're working on a steel hardtail dubbed the Raw. So his new bike has just been run to second place in the epic Highland Trail. Super long, super hardcore bike packing event in Scotland, and he came second place on the new bike. So not a bad debut for a prototype as yet launched bike. Details are thin on the ground at the moment, but did actually steel frame. What I can't wait to find out about this bike is where it fits into range. Now, the person behind Mason Cycles, Dom Mason, has experience with mountain bikes. When he was at Kinesis, he developed and designed a mountain bike hardtail that I remember reviewing many, many years ago. But what I can't wait to find out is whether this is a natural extension of the Boker and the ISO, so more of a bike packing focused steel hardtail rather than more of a kind of conventional mountain bike steel hardtail. I guess the clue will be in the geometry and the features you would expect on a bike packing bike. So mounts for extra accessories like racks and bottles, and designed for frame packs, and big tyre clearance for mountain bike tyres rather than gravel tyres. But I can't wait to find out more on it. It looks really good from a few pictures I've seen on social media, and it seems like a natural move, a natural evolution for Mason in that sort of gravel space, but I can't wait to find out more about it. But let me know your thoughts on this bike down below. So there we go then, some juicy bike tech news from the world of cycling. Dogma F14, electronic brakes from Shimano, a mad 3D printed crankset from SRAM, and a new Mason steel hardtail. So let me know what you think of all the news down below, and stay tuned for my next weekly roundup of news coming very soon, and subscribe if you haven't already to make sure you don't miss that. But that's all for now. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again next time.